Act 3. Power corrupts. Lady Macbeth made sure no time was wasted for her husband to be crowned. Within days, the new king and queen moved into their palace. One of Macbeth's first visitors was Banquo. "It seems those witches did know the future," he said to the king. Macbeth nodded, remembering that the witches had also said that Banquo's children would be kings one day. "Will you join us for a meal tonight?" Macbeth asked, stifling a yawn. He'd barely slept for the past few nights, troubled by guilt. "I will, sir," Banquo replied. "I have to run an errand, but I will be back in time to eat with you." With Banquo gone, Macbeth began to brood. What if someone wanted him dead, just as he had killed Duncan to become king? Hadn't Banquo just reminded him what the witches had said? Banquo would surely remember the predictions for his own 2 sons. Tortured by these thoughts, Macbeth convinced himself that Banquo wanted him dead. That must surely be why he was coming back that night to kill him. "I've done all these terrible things, and now they will be done to me too," Macbeth wailed. "Being in power means that I am vulnerable to attack." Macbeth decided that he had to protect himself. Wasting no time, Macbeth spoke with one of his most trusted servants. He instructed him to arrange for Banquo and his sons to be murdered. Before the night was over, more blood would be shed. Later that night, Lady Macbeth found her husband pacing up and down in his chamber. Macbeth was exhausted, but when he closed his eyes, he remembered what he had done. "It's all gone wrong," Macbeth wailed. "I'm doomed." Banquo has been murdered, but his son Fleance has escaped. Lady Macbeth gasped. "You know what that means, don't you?" Macbeth said. "Those witches might have been right about everything up to now. It's obvious Banquo's son will kill me, and he'll become the new king." "Stop this," Lady Macbeth said. "Haven't you arranged a banquet for this evening? All your officers will be coming. It will be a magnificent evening with you as host." But consumed with guilt, Macbeth continued to brood. No amount of feasting would distract him from what he had done, nor what the witches had said. As Lennox, Ross, and Macbeth's other lords gathered around the new king's table, they had no idea that Banquo had been killed. Noticing Banquo's empty chair, the guests simply waited for him to arrive. The only other absent guest was Macduff. He had kept well away since Duncan's death. As the guests ate and chatted, the new queen kept her guests entertained. But Macbeth didn't join in the conversation. He stood up and went to the window. He looked out into the darkness, then turned and stared around the room. Out of the corner of his eye, Macbeth spotted a shadow. The misty shape came into view again. It grew darker as it moved across the room. Macbeth looked at the others. None of them seemed to have noticed the shape. He looked again. There it was. It had settled in his chair. It got darker, denser. It gradually formed the shape of a man. Macbeth struggled to breathe. He felt like he was choking. The shape opened his eyes and looked back at him. Sitting in the king's chair was Banquo's ghost. "Get out of here!" Macbeth screamed. "Stay in the ground where you are buried." Everyone in the room turned and stared at Macbeth. Had the king gone mad? "Are you all right?" Ross asked him. But Macbeth didn't hear him. Instead, he continued ranting at a ghost that no one else could see. "Don't worry," Lady Macbeth announced. "Pay no attention to him. He's fine. He does this quite often. It's an illness he's had since childhood. Knowing that the sleepless nights were driving her husband mad, she lied to her guests. But Macbeth's guests were unable to ignore him, despite what their queen said. "I think we'd better go," Lennox said. "Perhaps the king will be better in the morning." Lady Macbeth nodded, looking at her husband with concern. "Good night to you all," she said as they left. But the evil queen knew the king would be no better in the morning. He was living his worst nightmare. "Help me," Macbeth wept as he and his wife sat alone. "I fear more blood is going to flow." "Shush, husband," Lady Macbeth tried to soothe him. "Where's Macduff? Why didn't he come?" "Did you invite him?" Lady Macbeth asked. "I thought so," Macbeth replied. "Those witches will know where he is. They see what the future holds. I will find them tomorrow and ask for their help." Deep in the palace's cellar, Lennox met with another of Macbeth's lords. Unsettled by Macbeth's strange behaviour that night, they were worried about their new king. "I think Macbeth was right to kill Duncan's murderers," Lennox announced. "But Duncan's sons must be guilty too, or they wouldn't have fled. What's wrong with Macbeth? He's acting like he's gone mad." The other lord nodded. "I've just had news of Macduff. It seems he has fled to England to raise an army to attack Macbeth. Perhaps Macbeth won't remain king for long."